Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ingrid and this is Ingrid Reads a Lot. In today's video, I am doing my July wrap-up. I want to talk to you guys about all the books that I read in July. If you saw my last video or one of my last videos, I was in a bit of a slump, but that's all done in the month of July. So I have 7 books to talk to you about, and one of those is a DNF. We're gonna start with the DNF because I was in a slump. So I like to read books that I find easy to digest, and I had read another romance this month that I quite enjoyed, so I figured I would try another romance, and I tried, and let me get the name correctly because I have my computer there. It's a long name. I got abducted by aliens and now I'm trapped in a rom-com by Kimberly Lemming, and I actually read another book from another series that this author has, and I thought that one was okay. I think it was the I got drunk and something something. Are they all the same? I got drunk and I'm not sure. Anyway, all of that to say is that I attempted to read this book because I liked the premise. The very beginning of this book is quite fun. The main character is a scientist and she's observing meerkats. All of a sudden, a lion comes to attack her. And in that moment in time is when she gets abducted because these aliens chose to take people that were going to die anyway. I liked the little bit of world building that we got and why these people are getting abducted and how by mistake, and this is all in the very beginning of the book, so I don't think it's a lot of spoilers, but in the very beginning of the book, we find out that the aliens did not do a good job sort of learning about the world that we live in. And so all of the things in this alien world are prehistoric. Like they found some DNA samples or something, and there's like all these prehistoric creatures in this new alien world that these women were abducted. The reason I DNF'd this is because the spice is like so abrupt and sudden that didn't feel quite believable to me. And I know I'm reading a book about aliens abducting humans, but I felt like there was no build, and I have no issues with spice in a book if it makes sense for the characters. Like, I want a little bit of relationship building, just a little, doesn't have to be a ton. But this like goes from world building to spice in like less than 2 seconds. And I was like, okay, I don't want this. Like, I wish the story would have been so much more fun because I did enjoy the premise quite a bit and it's funny, but I didn't love that it kind of felt abrupt and just for the sake of spice, and there was no time spent actually developing this relationship, which is a bummer because I was hoping I was going to enjoy this. All right, and then the rest of the books that I read this month, I quite enjoyed all of them. I think the lowest star that I gave was a 3 stars, and that was for the other romance. But I want to start by talking about a book that I'm having a hard time rating. I think this is where star ratings are starting to become difficult for me because I don't feel like they encompass my actual feelings about books. And now I'm getting all like sidetracked, but I'm not going to talk. Maybe I'll film a video about this concept that I'm like trying to figure out if I still want to rate my books, because I'm having a hard time rating this book because, and let me get the book so that you guys know what I'm talking about. But the book I want to talk to you about, lighting change, stay closed. The book I want to talk to you about is The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. This is a medieval horror novel, and it's about 3 main characters. This is sapphic also, which I really enjoyed the bits that we got in this. That was sapphic, but this is a medieval horror novel that is set in a castle that is under siege. So these people are in this castle and they can't leave, but no food can get in either. And so the people outside the castle are basically like starving them out. In the very beginning of this novel, one of the characters, her name is Focine, is sort of a mage, I think. And she has already made a miracle happen, and so the king is like pressuring her to create food because they're like, we're gonna die if we don't have any more food. But I guess that is all the premise I want to give you, because I also want to talk about the fact that I had an extremely hard time getting through the beginning of this novel, and I almost DNF'd it. By the end of this, I really liked it. It's a very difficult novel to get into, but the description I gave this on Fable, which is, I think, where I've mostly been putting my finished, like keeping track of my finished books. But sidetrack again, the feeling I had while reading this is that you're inside someone's head while they're hallucinating about being in a castle under siege. because it's very much like a fever dream. And I know a lot of people have described that, but it makes, like, that is totally what it feels like. You're inside a hallucination. So it's very difficult to kind of get into because you're thrown into this world. You don't really know what's going on, and everyone feels like they're hallucinating. Once I actually got into it and I kind of just stopped trying to understand the world and went with the flow, I quite enjoyed this. So I already talked about Focine, who is a mage in this castle, but I also want to talk to you about Servoin, who is a knight, and she is kind of like a renowned knight for something that she has done in the past. But right now, she's almost like a figurehead. Like, she doesn't really do anything because the king doesn't want any harm to come to her because she's like his shining example type thing. And then we also have Rayla. Trayla is the other main character in this book, and she is in the castle because she is seeking revenge against Servoin. And so all these people get stuck in this castle while all this is going on. Because Focine is this mage, the saints then arrive and they give them food. And it's like this miracle happened. But is it really a miracle? Because all three of our characters are like, this sounds too good to be true. And that is all I'll say without spoiling anything. And I'm going to put this down. The other parts that I enjoyed of this book is the religious aspect of this, because they have this religion that these saints are a part of. I really liked Focine's point of view because I liked the way it explored how knowledge is almost a detriment and a cause for damnation. And this is kind of like an undergoing theme in a lot of religions, where especially like the whole Adam and Eve thing, where Eve eats the apple, and that is the symbol of knowledge, and so they are no longer holy, right? And this book kind of illustrates that through Focine, because she used to be a nun in this religion that they follow. But because she sought out this knowledge and found out about magic almost, right? Like the things that she can do are not they're not like rational, or it doesn't follow the laws of physics in this world. She is then shunned by the other nuns, and she's seen as a heretic and mad. And I really enjoy that, because it's like, I am someone that really enjoys seeking out knowledge. And like recently I've been watching a lot of channels about archaeology, and archaeological history really puts a big damper onto religion, right? Because we know that these other humans were here thousands of years before any religion was ever even established. And so in my opinion, that almost like it voids them out, right? Like, yeah, whatever, like I'll just say that. But anyway, I really enjoyed this part of the book because I like when a horror novel, although gory and weird things happen, but it always makes me think of different things. Like in this, the Focine part of this was the part where I thought of like, yeah, this like parallel between the religions is really, really interesting, and how like seeking knowledge in the heads of these churches is not a good thing. I enjoyed that. The part of Servoin in this is the part where I kind of got like a little bogged down for me. I enjoyed that a lot of her story had to do with servitude, and kind of Servoin coming into her own, because she realizes that she is her own person and does not need to be in service of anyone. But she's a knight, and that's what knights do, right? So it's like, it was very difficult for her. Anyway, I don't know what to rate this, so I'm going to leave this as is. I almost DNF'd it, but then by the end, I'm like, you know what? This is good. So I think if I had to absolutely give it a rating, it would probably be in the 3.5 range, just because I cannot forget that I almost DNF'd this and almost put it down because I could not get into it. It took me a long amount of time to get to this, to finish this book because of that. But once I passed that halfway point, I think it was, I really enjoyed this. So take that for what you will, because if you like reading something nonsensical and gory and set in medieval times, about these Sapphic women living in medieval time. And I should say that the Sapphic part of this is not a big part, right? Like, you get some point of view from Focine, sort of like being attracted to Servoin, and also Trayla and Servoin had a thing before. We don't see any of these relationships develop, and this ends before anything can further happen with these characters. So I enjoyed this, is what I will say. It's probably about a 3.5 star. All right, let's talk about the next romance I read. It's called Savor It by Tara DeWitt. I don't know how to say her name. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. And this is a small town romance, which I'm a huge fan of, especially when I'm needing like a little bit of a pick-me-up and something that doesn't, it's just fun. Like the stakes are not very high. And this novel is set in Oregon in a very small town. One of our main characters, the male main character, has moved to Oregon because he used to be a chef in New York, I think it was. But something happens with him and he kind of loses his spark. And he hasn't really, hasn't been able to do what he used to do, which was, he was this young Michelin-starred chef, and now he's kind of like lost it. So he moved to Oregon to work for a bit of time, I think in the summer, so that he can help them develop a restaurant there. And our other main character, the female main character, lives in this town. She loves this small town vibe. This kind of reminded me of Gilmore Girls, but not the fall vibes of Gilmore Girl, more of like the small town feel of it, where everyone kind of knows everyone and they do different things and together and all these things. I really liked the female main character. She was an animal lover. She has like all these animals. I love the emotional side of this book where, our male main character is having a really hard time because he has to take care of his niece when his sister dies. And we get a lot of that in them kind of working it out together. But yeah, this was cute, fun, 3 stars. I quite enjoyed it. And I would read more from this author. Having said that, I didn't think it was so revolutionary that it was a 5-star book for me. I thought it did what the premise was supposed to do. It wasn't anything amazing. And that's why I gave it a 3, a solid book, not something I'll think about it ever again. You know what I mean? And that's why when I give something like a 4 or 5 stars is books that I literally sit and I think about it after and I research things. And yeah, so that's Savor It by Tara DeWitt, I think is her name. All right, next up I read My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. Stephen Graham Jones is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors, and he writes mainly horror, and this is a slasher horror mystery type book. This is the first book in a trilogy, which I think is quite fun because his other book that I read is a standalone. But our main character in this book is Jade Daniels, and she's a high school student that is living a very difficult life, and she's obsessed with slashers. She lives in a small town in Idaho. If you are looking for that slasher throwback type thing, this book really does that. And I liked Jade as a main character, but I also liked that Jade is a very unreliable character because she tries so hard to make a slasher happen in the small town. So there have been some unexplained deaths in the town, and Jade tries to link everything to a slasher. And so as the reader, you're trying, well, at least I'm trying to figure out what actually happened and who is doing the murdering. And Jade makes it very difficult for the reader to figure that out because everything she does and talks about is slasher movies. I adored this book. I think it was really well done. I liked I liked Jade as a main character, although she's very tragic. And you find out, I'm not going to spoil anything, but you find out in this book why she uses this slasher type thing to cope. I also loved the small town feel of this and, these figures in Jade's life that are trying to help her, but she is this she's a teenager that doesn't want help from anyone. And there's also a horror aspect to this book for sure, which I also really liked. I gave this a 4 stars. I'm definitely going to keep going in the series because I want to know what happens. And I think the second book, because I already looked up the description, it's set years after this happened. So I think it's already set when Jade is an adult. So I'm looking forward to that too because I want to know how the character has progressed. But yeah, if you are a little weirdo like I am and you love slasher movies, you will definitely enjoy this. And the writing is always impeccable. Another thing I want to say, very difficult for a adult man to write a teenage character. And I think Stephen Graham Jones did that very well. It never felt like a caricature of a teenager. You felt like this was a real person that is going through a lot of hard things. So kudos to him. I love this and I gave it a 4 stars. Next up, another 4 stars is Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies by Catherine Mack. This is a cozy mystery that I got from the library. I had heard other YouTubers talking about this and I wanted to pick it up. This book kicks off with our main character, Eleanor Dash, which is a very I love that name, kind of. And she is in a book tour in Italy, along with some other authors, when someone in her life, and this guy is part of the reason why she writes these mystery books, because she met him years ago in Italy, and they sort of solved a real-life murder together. And so she decides to write these books in like a mystery setting where Eleanor and this guy solve murders together. But now the real person is in her life because she has to pay royalties to him because he is in her book. Like, his real name is used in the book. He's not a good person, but she kind of has to deal with him. And he comes to Eleanor and he's adamant that someone is trying to kill him and he needs her help to solve this murder. I really loved that this book did the whole like breaking the fourth wall thing, but in a way that I enjoyed, because there's another book that I read and I always forget the name of the book. I'll put the cover here, but that book tried to do the whole breaking the fourth wall thing, but it didn't work for me because I didn't like the main character. So it almost felt like annoying to me. But when I like the character, that works for me. This is a blend of that book and Finley Donovan, in the sense that Finley Donovan is like a cozy, funny mystery, even though some serious stuff is happening. And so it is in this book. I figured out sort of like what was going on pretty quickly, but that didn't take away from my feelings on the book. I still really enjoyed it, and I loved the parts of her talking about her craft of writing mystery and things like that. I love this, and I thought it was really fun, and I know that there's a second book in this series, and I'll probably pick that up too when I need a pick-me-up. All right, let's talk about my two favorite books of the month, and they are both like a little bit of the horror genre, but let's talk about first Bury Your Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. I picked this up because even though I didn't love The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I thought that the premise of this was more of my speed, and so I picked this up. The V.E. Schwab herself described this as toxic lesbian vampires, and that is very much what is happening in this book. There are three characters, and these are all kind of, aside from one character, they're all set in the past, and you see as these characters come into their own what's happening in their lives, and it's a very dark novel. I loved it. Honestly, like, there is a whole video, and I'm not going to talk too much about this book because I don't want to spoil it, because I feel like everyone that goes into this book should go into just with the tagline that V. Schwab gave you. Like, if you think that that's something that you would enjoy, then just go into this without knowing much. But if you want more of our thoughts on this, we actually filmed a whole video on Elle's channel, which I'll link up above if you want to watch that, because it's like over an hour of the three of us discussing this book. And I loved it. I think it was like so dark, and I just love this. And yeah, and also the version that I got is a Fairy Lou version, and come on, look how beautiful this is. I know I've already shown this, but like, gorgeous. Okay, next up we have my favorite book of the month for sure is Blood on Her Tongue by Joanna Van Veen. This is a horror novel set in the Netherlands, and our main character is Lucy, and Lucy's sister is not doing so well. So Lucy's husband sends for her because they think that Lucy's twin sister Sarah is kind of having a mental break. And as we all know, if you were a woman in the 1800s, or a lot of the time in the past, if anything psychological was going on, you would probably be thrown into an asylum and never to be heard from again. And Lucy does not want that to happen to her sister. She very much loves her sister, and so she goes to her sister's house at her husband's request to see if she can help. And we get sort of like a little bit of a different timeline, because you get some letters from Sarah to Lucy, and you can clearly see this like descent into madness that Sarah is going into after finding a bog body in her estate. And she sees this woman that was very much like gruesomely killed, and Sarah becomes obsessed with this body. This book talks, and that's all I'll say without spoiling anything, but this book talks a lot about like relationships between siblings and codependent relationships at that, because they're twins. And it also, touches a lot about the women's rights and things like that. But it also has a horror element to this, And the way that this author describes different things, it makes you feel like you're feeling it. Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but there's a scene in this, and this is kind of gross. If you want to actually read this, I wouldn't listen to what I'm about to say because it doesn't spoil anything, but kind of, but you'll see what I mean. There's a scene in this where Lucy touches Sarah's skin and like a piece of skin like flakes off and she puts it in her mouth. And like this entire scene is described like so in depth and you're like, oh my God, like it's just so gross and weird. And I don't know, this book is just so well done. And I absolutely love it. Like, I love the ending in this. I love the story. Like, what the actual, like, it's not really a twist, but what the actual thing is. This book touches a lot on that, like, hunger aspect of things that, you know, women in the past felt, like this hunger for freedom. And that's a lot of the themes that were in Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. And so that's where I feel like these two books are related. But yeah, I really love this, but be prepared if you're going to read this. It is very gruesome and descriptive, but so well done. Yeah, that's my favorite book of the month. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys read this month, and if there's anything that you think I would like to read, let me know in the comments. I think I'm definitely out of the slump now because I'm like excited to read. I'm already in the middle of another book that is also very good, and I love reading things that I'm excited about. And I hate reading things that are kind of lukewarm. But that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoy. I will see you on the next one. Goodbye. What was that?